Hello all, Old Geek here, and in this video I will be looking at Monster Manual 2, AD&D's third compendium of creatures, originally published by TSR back in 1983. I got my first copy of this book either late 84, early 85, around that time. I know for certain it was the fourth AD&D book that I bought, after the Dungeon Master's Guide, the Player's Handbook and the Monster Manual, in that order. Running to 160 pages, it was the largest of the first edition monster books, though only about 130 of those pages actually listed monsters. The rest were taken up with instructions on using the book, a massive revamp of the game's encounter tables, and a full index detailing the monsters in all three of the bestiaries. The Monster Manual 2 was the first book to be solely made to TSR's new design style, with the orange spine and Jeff Easley artwork adorning the cover. The cover art. Now I'm pretty sure this is meant to depict a firbolg, a new type of giant that featured in this book. But it's an odd piece. Not only is the giant on the cover larger than the stats for the firbolg suggest, he's also not as clever. They're meant to be very bright, because it appears he doesn't know how to use his halberd. The poses on this cover are dynamic. It's a combat scene. The trees are lovely and spooky, but that giant is just awkward and odd. Is he trying to swipe the adventurer with the shaft of his weapon? Why is he holding it so close to the axe and the spikes? Answers please in the comments below. Internal artwork is mostly by Easley and Harry Quinn, with a few pieces by other artists. It is slick, clean and very professional compared with TSR's earlier books, but as a result it feels a little lacking in character. There is also a distinct lack of any truly memorable images. There's nothing to rival Trampier's best work from the Monster Manual, or Nicholson's awesome full-page Grell piece from the Fiend Folio. Monster stats are pretty much the same as we saw in the Fiend Folio. They are tidy and easy to use, and the text is similar. It gets to the point. There's very little in the way of fluff, and the images do serve as descriptions for most of the creatures and do the job adequately. A large proportion of the creatures in the Monster Manual 2 were drawn from earlier modules. Most modules published around this time included several new monsters. It's one of the reasons why we bought modules, to find these new monsters tucked in the back. And the vast majority of those from those early modules are reprinted in this book. The highest proportion comes from the S series, more specifically the Lost Caverns of Sojkanth's extra booklet. That was a highly entertaining monster menagerie of an adventure, and was clearly intended to showcase an array of fantastical new beasts to whet the appetite. We also see other modules from the S series plundered for this book, and along with those we have monsters from throughout the A series, and quite a few of the early adventures from the I series as well as a number of other modules. So, if you already had these modules, was this book a waste of time? Well, no, not entirely, as it did treat us to a variety of brand new creatures too. And it's nice to have all this new stuff in one place, and not have to remember where each creature was published. As a teenager, I was entranced by the Monster Manual 2. I loved new monsters, and I would read them over and over again, so I wouldn't hear a bad word said about it. But 35 years later, I can see that I was a little bit misguided. Flicking through the book again, there's so much in here that I never actually used. Apart, that is, from when I ran the specific modules themselves that the monsters came in, or a few of the modules from 1984 and 1985 which included them. The UK series did. So why didn't I use them? And why have I never used so many of them in later years. The reason for that is that so many of them are ultra specialist in their nature, either very high level or extra planar beings, and I never ran a plane hopping campaign. Maybe if I had stuck with 2nd edition throughout the 1990s and got into Planescape, then I would have found a lot more use for them. But I didn't. So, what creatures are in this book? Well, we get more demons and more devils, including high-level individuals. There's Grazit and there's Frazer Blue. We also get their counterparts in the form of the Solars, the Planetars and the Divas, essentially D&D versions of angels. There's more giants and dragons, because of course they are always welcome. There's not a lot more giants and dragons. We also get the daemons, or demons with an extra A in their name. Now, in British English, AE is simply pronounced E, as in encyclopedia. We spell it with the AE. So in British English, it is simply demons. But I pronounce it differently for my American friends. We've got the Demodans and various weird creatures from the various elemental planes. Some of the strangest creatures in the book are the ultra-lawful Modrons and their overlord Primus. Now I know these would be used in Planescape in a specific module, March of the Modrons, or the Great Modron March, that's what it is. But I didn't have that, because I didn't do Planescape. In true pulp style, we get a load more dinosaurs, though some of these are very obscure. I was obsessed with dinosaurs as a kid, and I'd never heard of several of those listed here. Then the book lurches to the totally mundane, simple snakes, goats and cats, including the infamous stats for a regular house cat that make them highly likely to be able to kill a first level magic user in melee combat. There's swans, there's hawks, there's ravens. All these animals feature in this book, and I'm glad they do, because regular normal animals do help a DM flesh out a campaign world, even if some might find them a little boring. So, in my review of the original Monster Manual, I mentioned there was a lot of very familiar creatures, a lot of iconic creatures from fiction and from myth. And then in the Fiend Folio, there's quite a lot of creatures that then became just as iconic as D&D went on. What appears in Monster Manual 2 then that became iconic? In truth, with the exception of the mighty Tarrasque, almost all of the iconic monsters in here were those sourced from modules. We've got the Yuan Ti, one of my personal favourites. I love using Yuan Ti as adversaries, but they came from I1, Dwellers of the Forbidden City. Also from I1 we have the Mongol Men, the Tazloi and the Aboleth. The infamous Demilich is in here, which of course made its debut in S1, Tomb of Horrors. And we have some creatures from S3, Expedition to the Barrier Peaks, most notably the interesting Vegapygmies. The A series provides a number of monsters. Among them is the mysterious Cloaker, and another of my favourite monsters, the Myconids, Mushroom Men, hippie mushroom men. And who can ignore the Gibbering Mouther, a creature from C1, Hidden Shrine of Tamurchan. There are many, many more that are taken from modules, but the ones I've listed are probably the best known. We've got the Duergar, the Phoenix, and the Kraken. These are all welcome additions from various myths and legends. But aside from them, you should already be able to see that the monsters that really made their mark on D&D in this book mostly came from modules. Very few of those that were genuinely new in this book had anything resembling staying power in D&D. There are a number of excellent creatures in here though, including a fair few races that a DM can use extensively in their campaign. I've already touched on the Yuan-Ti, the Myconids and Vegapygmies. Add to those the Darrow, vicious little dwarfkin. There's the Thri-Kreen, which would have gone to have a major impact on the Dark Sun setting. And there's a high number of Fae-type creatures in here for people who are into that style of game. But one significant issue blights the overall usefulness of the book, and that's the best stuff in here is not for low-level parties. It's much more suited for DMs looking to create campaign material for mid to high-level groups. And that's not even taking into account the extra planar stuff, which of course is mainly aimed at high-level parties. Even those races that I do like for their world-building potential are designed for very specific environments. They are not common creatures, nor are they intended to be. In fact, the vast majority of entries in this book are defined as being rare or very rare in terms of their game frequency. Thus, the Monster Manual 2 sits somewhat awkwardly in the collection. It had neither the immediate utility and comfort level of the Monster Manual, nor did it have the level of imagination of the Fiend Folio or the darkness of that book. It did enchant my youthful brain, but it frustrates my older one nowadays, as I feel all too often I would have to make special concessions in order to shoehorn most of this book into my game. It is great if you want to go delving into the hells or the abyss, or trudge through the elemental planes, or probe the darkest reaches of the underworld. But for traditional D&D dungeon delves, it's next to useless. Apart from the encounter tables, and the lists of monsters by level, terrain and frequency at the back of the book, they are a very, very welcome addition indeed. So is it worth getting? To complete the collection, of course, and to play a different style of D&D, yes, again. To challenge high-level parties, very much so. Just don't expect to be leaning on its contents very often otherwise. Well, that's been me, the old geek, once again. I hope you've enjoyed this slice of nostalgia, looking into another older book from yesteryear. Do click like, subscribe, comment. All helps my channel, and I'll see you next time.